My dad is so petty. He doesn't want mom's boyfriend at my wedding, I heard my daughter say as she laughed with my wife. So I walked in and said, "You're right. I'm petty, and starting today, I will no longer pay for your college or your wedding." Sup, Reddit. Get ready for the chaos you're about to hear. Get yourself some snacks and enjoy the show. So I, 48 male, have been married to Miranda for 21 years, and just found out I've been paying for my own betrayal like some kind of premium membership. While I'm busting my butt for 12 hours welding stuff that could kill you if you mess up, she's been playing house with some dude who looks like he from a protein powder commercial. I run welding operations for Sterling Industrial. Pressure vessels, chemical plant stuff, the kind of work where one screw-up can cost millions. My crew trusts me because I've never half done anything, never let them down, and I've saved more people than I can count. My buddy Tommy from Night Shift always said I work too much. But hey, someone had to pay for Princess Celeste's Georgetown education. I spent my days building stuff I thought would last forever. Just finished a refinery shutdown 2 weeks early. Earned a $15,000 bonus that Miranda immediately started spending in her head on more self-discovery workshops. Because apparently finding yourself requires weekend retreats where phones are discouraged and husbands aren't welcome. Those workshops? $800 a pop to learn about authentic living from people who'd never worked a real day in their lives. I've been paying for Celeste's Georgetown education, $31,000 per semester for her to major in being a brat with a minor in daddy's credit card. Her wedding to Luke is 8 months out, and I've already dropped $180,000 on deposits for what was going to be a $450,000 circus. The venue charges $850 per head because apparently the country club wasn't aligned with her vision board. Luke's a good kid, though. Engineering student, works part-time at a machine shop, calls me sir, and actually means it. When Celeste dragged him to wedding venues, he kept suggesting cheaper places and looked genuinely uncomfortable when I offered to cover the down payment on their first house. Should have been my first hint he had more sense than the rest of my family. After some break-ins in the area last year, I'd put in cameras covering every entrance and the main living areas. Just being careful with a house worth $800,000 that sits empty most of the time. Last Thursday, I got off early for the first time in months. Tommy had been busting my chops about becoming a work zombie. So when we finished ahead of schedule, I figured I'd surprise Miranda with flowers and hit that steakhouse she'd been drooling over on Instagram. Her white Mercedes, payment 36 of 72 that I'm covering, was in the driveway when it should have been at Ian's home studio for her weekly dose of emotional validation. I walked in quiet, planning to surprise her, when I heard voices from the kitchen. Celeste was home from college, probably to raid our fridge and complain about her roommate. That's when I heard the words that ended my marriage. "Dad is so petty. He doesn't want your boyfriend at my wedding." I stopped dead like someone had hit me with a live wire. Miranda's laugh came next, that nervous giggle she does when she's caught lying. Ian's contribution to our family has always been more emotionally fulfilling than your father's anyway. Nate will just have to deal with it, or get left behind. 21 years of marriage. Every 5 a.m. alarm. Every weekend I spent working overtime so she could take healing retreats to Napa with her divorced friends who probably taught her that husbands are just ATMs that snore. And here they were, laughing about how I was being petty for not wanting my wife's side piece at the wedding I was funding. I took a deep breath, walked into that kitchen, and looked my daughter dead in the eyes. "You're right, Celeste. I am petty. And as of right now, I'm done paying for your college, your wedding, or any other dang thing." The coffee mug Miranda was holding exploded against the marble floor like a grenade. Celeste's jaw dropped, like I'd just announced the world was ending. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a torch. "Nate, don't be ridiculous," Miranda scrambled, her voice hitting notes only dogs and gold diggers can hear. "We were just having a girl talk. You can't be serious." "Who the heck is Ian?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Celeste and Miranda looked at each other like two kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. They were annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. "Dad, you're totally overreacting," Celeste said, switching to that sweet voice. "Ian is just Mom's wellness coach. We were laughing about something random." "Random?" I shot back. "So random you want him at your wedding instead of the guy paying for everything?" Miranda tried to touch my arm. I stepped back like she had the plague. "Nate, Ian and I have a deep spiritual connection that goes beyond traditional relationship boundaries. You're just not evolved enough to understand polyamorous consciousness." Polyamorous consciousness. This woman really tried to therapy speak her way out of cheating. The audacity could power a small town. 20 minutes later, I was still standing in that kitchen, listening to them explain how I was the problem. Miranda kept using phrases like emotional unavailability and toxic masculinity, while Celeste nodded along like she was getting college credit for this garbage. Dad, you work all the time, Celeste continued. When was the last time you actually listened to Mom? Ian creates space for her authentic self to emerge. I'd been breaking my back for 2 decades while these two lived like trust fund babies, and now I was the bad guy for not embracing my wife's journey of self-discovery with her dang life coach. Spiritual connection? I felt something snap inside me. Is that what you call getting screwed by your life coach while I'm working overtime to fund your spiritual journey? Celeste's face went from nervous to full attitude mode. It's always about money with you. You think because you pay for stuff, you own us? That's toxic masculinity, Dad. 22 years I'd worked myself to the bone for this family. Turned down promotions because Celeste was building her social foundation. Passed on starting my own business because Miranda wanted financial security. Right. Security to screw around while I paid for everything. You know what? You're absolutely right, I said, my voice dropping to that dangerous quiet. I've been a complete moron thinking my sacrifices meant anything to either of you. Nate, calm down, Miranda pleaded. Ian helps me process emotions that you're not emotionally available to handle. How long? I needed to know exactly how deep this knife was buried. Miranda stared at those $500 tiles like they held the meaning of life. 14 months, she whispered. 14 months. Not a fling, not a mistake, over a year of calculated lying, of coming home exhausted to fake kisses and nonsense small talk while she was probably texting Captain Smoothie about their next alignment session. I turned to Celeste. And you? How long have you known your mother was cheating? Dad! Celeste gasped, but I wasn't done. How long, Celeste? My daughter lifted her chin like she was proud of it. From the beginning. Mom told me because she said I'd understand. Ian makes her happy, Dad. Like actually happy for once. Every word was like acid eating through whatever respect I had left. My own daughter had been in on it for over a year. Ian is more fun than you, Celeste continued, really twisting the knife. He doesn't lecture us about budgets or make us feel guilty for enjoying life. He's teaching Mom to prioritize her authentic self, unlike you. The kicker? While they were schooling me about my emotional shortcomings, Miranda's phone kept buzzing with texts. Ian was probably wondering where his meal ticket was while I was having this family meeting about his role in our dynamic. I walked out before I said something that would land me in anger management. Drove straight to Murphy's, where Tommy was nursing his usual drink after his shift. Geez, Nate, you look like someone welded your butt to a fire hydrant, he said, when I collapsed into the booth. What happened? I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head and muttering, unbelievable, under his breath. You know what you gotta do, right? Tommy said when I finished. Scorched earth, brother. These people have been playing you for a fool. I don't know where to start. Start with cutting off the money. All of it. Let them see how far Ian's spiritual guidance stretches when the bills come due. Tommy finished his drink and set it down firmly. And get yourself a damn lawyer. Steve Williams. He's the guy you need. He leaned forward. Listen, man. I've watched you carry this family on your back for years. You missed your nephew's graduation because Celeste needed emergency money for some spring break nonsense. You worked through pneumonia because Miranda's credit card was maxed on her therapy retreat. When's the last time either of them asked how your day was? He was right. I couldn't remember the last real conversation I'd had with either of them that wasn't about money or their problems. Next morning in Steve's office, I laid out the whole story while he took notes and occasionally muttered "holy cow" under his breath. Here's the beautiful part, Steve said, cracking his knuckles like he was about to perform surgery. Arizona is a community property state, but adultery changes everything. We're going to protect your assets, claw back fraudulent spending, and make sure they understand what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. Steve had been tracking Miranda's spending patterns for months, just in case. Turns out lawyers talk to each other, and Ian's name had come up before. Funny thing about your wife's life coach, Steve said with that predator grin. Got a call last week from a colleague in Sacramento. Woman named Patricia. She's looking for Ian too. Seems he pulled the same spiritual awakening scam on her and her husband's marriage. Cleaned out their joint account for intensive healing sessions, then disappeared when the divorce papers showed up. The pattern was textbook manipulation. Find vulnerable marriages. Target the wife with spiritual nonsense. Create emotional dependency. Then drain the bank accounts while promising transformational breakthroughs. Ian was basically running a Ponzi scheme with feelings instead of money. We spent 4 hours mapping out the financial battlefield. I had $347,000 in joint accounts, plus $180,000 in the money market, and $95,000 in my separate welding account. The house would have to be sold. Miranda's part-time interior design business, pulling in maybe $800 a month, wouldn't cover the $4,800 mortgage without my income. What about Celeste? I asked. Steve leaned back. She's 21, no legal obligation. That's your call. But I'd make her figure out real quick which side of this war she wants to be on. Those wedding deposits, he continued with that grin, they were paid from joint accounts without your knowledge of the affair. That's fraudulent use of marital assets. We can demand full reimbursement. This was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. So I can force them to pay back money they've already spent? Every dang penny? Plus interest and legal fees? And here's the cherry on top. Ian's business isn't licensed. He's been operating illegally, which means Miranda's been funding criminal activity with marital assets. Steve pulled out a file thicker than a welding manual. Sacramento, Portland, Denver. Same pattern every time. Move in, target married women, build dependency, then disappear when the money dried up. Patricia in Sacramento? Ian cost her $89,000 before vanishing. She's been tracking him ever since. Can I talk to her? She's actually driving down from Sacramento this weekend. Wants to compare notes. Apparently, Ian left quite a trail of destruction. When I left his office, I felt like Neo seeing the Matrix for the first time. I had options, leverage, and the element of surprise. My phone had 67 missed calls. Time to have some fun. My daughter's fiancé, Luke, called while I was sitting in my truck, and I genuinely felt bad for the kid. Mister. Nate, Celeste's losing her mind and won't explain what happened. She just keeps saying you're being unreasonable. Can we talk? The poor guy had no idea he was about to marry into a soap opera. Meet me at Benny's Diner in an hour. And Luke, you're going to want to sit down for this conversation. Luke was waiting when I arrived, looking like a man who'd just been told his project was over budget and behind schedule. Sir, I don't understand what could be this serious. I looked him dead in the eyes. Luke, do you know Ian? His confused expression told me everything. Yeah, Mrs. Miranda's life coach. Seems like a nice guy. Celeste talks about him being like a mentor. Why? He's been sleeping with my wife for 14 months. And Celeste wants him at your wedding. Luke went white as fresh primer. The poor kid gripped that coffee cup like it was the only solid thing left in his world. I had no idea, he kept repeating. Celeste gave me this whole speech about transparency when I mentioned my ex texting me. Apparently transparency has some fine print, I said. But now you know what kind of family you're marrying into. We sat in silence for a long time. She knew the whole time, he finally said. When I mentioned Ian seemed like a good mentor for married couples, she just smiled and said he was really good at relationship dynamics. She was laughing at me. What should I do? Luke asked. That's your call, son. But ask yourself, if she can hide something this big for over a year, what else is she lying about? We shook hands, and I could see his whole world shifting behind his eyes. Following Steve's battle plan, I spent the next 2 days moving money faster than a Vegas card dealer. Half of everything into new accounts under my name only, credit cards canceled, and the best part, calling every wedding vendor with the legal ammunition Steve had given me. Hi, I'm Nate Martin. I need to cancel the wedding for Celeste Martin and Luke Williams on May 15th. Oh no! Let me check your contract. You're outside the cancellation window, so you'd forfeit the $35,000 deposit. Actually, I paid that deposit, and I'm currently divorcing due to adultery. I'll need your legal department's contact info regarding fraudulent use of marital assets. Magic words. Suddenly, every vendor was very interested in working with me. Amazing how fast people find solutions when lawyers get mentioned. The florist was particularly fun. It started with sorry, no refunds, and ended with we'll have a check ready by noon. Turns out, when you explain that the money was stolen through fraudulent marriage contracts, even wedding vultures suddenly find their conscience. 17 calls over 2 days. Venue, caterer, photographer, florist, DJ, the works. By noon on the second day, Celeste's dream wedding was officially nuked from orbit, and I had $180,000 back in accounts that Miranda couldn't touch. My phone started going off like a smoke alarm within 30 minutes. How could you do this to me? Miranda's voice was pure panic mixed with rage. My card got declined at Target. Probably about as humiliating as finding out your wife's been playing house with her life coach, I replied, calm as a safety inspector. Steve will be contacting you about the divorce. Where are we supposed to live? How will Celeste finish school? Maybe Ian can help. After all, he's been such an important part of your journey. Time to see if his spiritual guidance comes with a 401k. I hung up while she was screaming something about financial abuse. Celeste called next, but instead of yesterday's entitled princess, this was pure desperation seasoned with rage. Dad, what the heck? The venue just canceled. How could you do that? Actions have consequences. Time you learned that lesson. Luke wants to call off the engagement. Did you tell him about Ian? I didn't ruin anything, sweetheart. You did that when you decided to be part of Mommy's lie. I can't afford my last semester. Then get a job. Or ask Ian for a loan. Ask Ian for, I hear spiritual guidance pays well. Saturday afternoon, Patricia showed up at Steve's office looking like she'd stepped out of a crime documentary, organized, determined, and carrying a file folder that could choke a horse. Ian Santana, she said, dropping photos on Steve's desk. That's his real name. Ian Williams is just his latest fake identity. The photos showed Ian with different women in different cities, always the same pose. Spiritual guru surrounded by adoring disciples. In Sacramento, he was Ian Miller. In Portland, Ian Matthews. Same scam, different name. He cleaned us out for $89,000, Patricia continued. Convinced my husband that I needed intensive healing after our son's accident. 3 sessions a week at $300 each, plus weekend retreats that cost $2,000 a pop. My husband worked double shifts to pay for my recovery. What happened to your marriage? I asked. Divorced. Ian made sure I blame my husband for not being emotionally evolved enough to support my healing journey. Took me 8 months to realize I'd been brainwashed by a professional con artist. She pulled out bank records, receipts, even screenshots of text messages between Ian and her husband discussing payment schedules. Here's the thing, Patricia said. Ian always has an exit strategy. When marriages blow up, he disappears. Usually right around the time lawyers get involved. So he's probably planning to ghost Miranda soon? If he hasn't already. The pattern is always the same. Your wife probably thinks she's special, but she's just another mark. Patricia had spent 2 years building a network of Ian's victims through online forums and private investigators. She documented his entire trail across 6 states, connecting with other women he'd scammed through victim support groups and legal networks. Steve was taking notes like he was documenting evidence for the FBI. This is even better than I thought, he said. We're not just dealing with adultery anymore. This is wire fraud, identity theft, and organized deception. Patricia, would you be willing to testify? I've been waiting 2 years for this chance, she said with a smile that could cut steel. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. But the real entertainment started that evening when Miranda's sister called. Nate, I'm so sorry, but I need to tell you something. Miranda's been bragging about Ian for months. She said you knew and didn't care because you were emotionally unavailable anyway. The nerve never stopped amazing me. She also said Ian was going to help pay for Celeste's wedding, that he was more successful than you. Well, I said, they're about to find out how successful he really is. That evening, Luke called with the best news of my life. Mister, Nate, I ended it with Celeste. Sorry to hear that, son. Don't be. When I confronted her, she tried to gaslight me. Said it wasn't a big deal, that I was being possessive. Then she asked if I could still get the house down payment from you, even if we postponed the wedding. This kid was learning fast. That was her main concern. The money, not the relationship. Bullet dodged, Luke. Bullet dodged. The divorce was cruising through faster than quality steel through a plasma cutter. Steve had receipts for everything, and Miranda's lawyer looked like he'd rather be defending tax cheats. But here's where Miranda made her biggest mistake. She thought she could play hardball. 2 weeks after I'd nuked the wedding, she showed up at my work site with Ian in tow. Apparently, Captain Protein Shake was going to intimidate me into being reasonable. I was in the middle of inspecting welds on a pressure vessel when Tommy tapped my shoulder. Nate, your wife's here with some yoga instructor-looking dude. They're demanding to see you. I looked across the yard where Miranda stood in designer heels completely wrong for a construction site, with Ian posed behind her like he was her bodyguard. This idiot was wearing a linen shirt and khakis to an industrial site where sparks fly and stuff explodes. Send them over, I said, pulling off my welding helmet. This should be fun. My entire crew stopped working to watch. Word travels fast on job sites, and everyone knew about the divorce. Tommy positioned himself nearby, arms crossed like a bouncer at a nightclub. Miranda click-clacked across the gravel in those ridiculous heels, Ian following like a lost puppy. Nate, we need to talk, she announced like she was calling a board meeting. This has gone far enough. We? I looked at Ian. Who the heck are you supposed to be? Ian stepped forward with this Zen master nonsense smile. I'm Ian, Miranda's partner. I think there's been some miscommunication about my role in the family dynamic. I started laughing. My crew stopped what they were doing to watch this soap opera unfold. Your role? I said. Your role is sleeping with another man's wife. Behind Ian, I could see my welders exchanging looks and trying not to crack up. Rico was literally biting his lip to keep from laughing. These guys had seen me handle everything from equipment failures to safety violations. But watching me dress down my wife's yoga instructor was peak entertainment. Ian's smile faltered. I understand you're hurt, but Miranda and I have built something beautiful together. We're hoping you can evolve past this toxic possessiveness. Toxic possessiveness, I repeated. That's what you call expecting your wife not to screw someone else? Miranda jumped in before Ian could dig himself deeper. Nate, be reasonable. Celeste's wedding is ruined. She can't finish school. And Ian's been more of a father to her than you ever were. Then he can pay for her wedding, I said. Problem solved. That's when Captain Save-A-Ho made his fatal mistake. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. Actually, he said with that smug smile, Miranda and I discussed this. I'm willing to contribute to Celeste's education as a gesture of good faith. He handed me a check for $25,000. $25,000. Tommy burst out laughing behind me. Did this clown just offer you 25 grand for a Georgetown semester? This idiot thought he could buy his way into my family with less than what Celeste spent on textbooks and sorority dues. You think 25 grand covers a Georgetown semester? I asked. His confidence started cracking. It's a start, a symbol of my commitment to the family. I ripped the check in half and let the pieces flutter to the ground like confetti. Here's a symbol of my commitment to your relationship, I said. Get the heck off my job site before I have security escort you out. In pieces. Miranda started panicking. Nate, you can't just... Yes, I can. This is private property. You're trespassing. Ian tried one more time. Miranda deserves to be happy. I will give her things you never could. Like what? Unemployment? Because that's what she's about to have. That's when Miranda played her last desperate card. I'll contest the divorce, she announced. I'll fight for spousal support, claim emotional abuse, and make this drag out for years. I will make you regret. I looked at her like she'd just challenged a welder to a poetry contest. Go ahead, I said. Steve's got 14 months of evidence of your affair, financial records of every penny you've spent on Ian, and witness statements from your own family. Plus, I've got security cameras that show him coming and going from our house. Ian went white as a sheet. Security cameras? Did you think I'd leave an $800,000 house unmonitored? I asked. I've got footage of you two going at it on my kitchen counter, in my pool, and on the couch I paid for. Steve's calling it Evidence Exhibit A through Z. You recorded us without consent, Miranda shrieked. That's when Ian cut and ran. Literally. He mumbled something about reassessing the situation and speedwalked toward his Tesla like his butt was on fire. Miranda watched her spiritual warrior abandon ship faster than a contractor with a failed inspection. Ian, wait, she called after him. But Mr. Consciousness was already backing out of the parking lot. Rico came over, still grinning like he'd won the lottery. Boss, that was beautiful. You want us to make sure they don't come back? Nah, they won't be back. Ian's probably already updating his LinkedIn profile from a Starbucks in California. The fallout from Miranda's failed power play was entertaining. Ian stuck around for 3 more weeks, probably draining Miranda's accounts before vanishing completely. Suddenly, Miss Spiritual Consciousness was facing reality without her enlightened life coach. My supervisor, Joe, who'd witnessed the whole show, pulled me aside after Miranda and Ian left. Nate, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, he said, grinning. Listen, there's something I've been meaning to discuss. Phoenix Industrial is opening a new complex. They want you to run welding operations. Significant pay bump, full relocation package, and honestly, sounds like you could use a fresh start. The Phoenix job was everything I'd been working toward without knowing it. New construction boom, major contracts lined up, and the chance to build something from scratch. Thanks, Joe. When do I start? Soon as you're ready. $25,000 signing bonus, full relocation assistance, and you'll be running your own crew. Meanwhile, Miranda's world was crumbling faster than a failed inspection report. Ian had cleaned out his apartment over the weekend, leaving 3 months' rent unpaid and taking off without a forwarding address. The state licensing board also opened an investigation. Turns out practicing as an unlicensed therapist while taking money is a felony in Arizona. Steve called with updates that were better than morning coffee. Ian cleaned out his apartment over the weekend, he reported. The landlord says he left 3 months' rent unpaid and took off without a forwarding address. Celeste called me 3 days after the worksite confrontation, her voice smaller than I'd heard since she was 12. Dad, Ian left. He said the situation was too complicated for his current life path. Wow, shocking, I said, not bothering to hide my sarcasm. Mom's having a breakdown. She keeps calling him, but his number's disconnected. His website's down too. Patricia called that same evening with news that made my week. Ian's gone, she said. But I've been tracking his credit cards and social media. Want to guess where he landed? California? Beverly Hills. Already set up shop as Ian Matthews. Back to his Portland identity. Posted on Instagram yesterday about new beginnings and spiritual partnerships. He's got 3 women commenting with heart emojis. Good grief. Gets better. I contacted all 3 women. Turns out Ian's been running the same game simultaneously. Told each one she was his twin flame and that he needed financial support to establish his practice. One of them already gave him $15,000. The methodical nature of Ian's con was almost impressive. Almost. I sent them all screenshots of his other identities. They filed a police report this morning. Miranda had to move out of our house when it sold. Bidding war between 3 couples who actually worked for their money. She found a 1-bedroom apartment that cost $1,200 monthly, more than half her retail income of about $2,000 per month from working $12 an hour, and didn't allow pets. So Celeste's designer emotional support dog went to live with Miranda's sister. Celeste dropped out of Georgetown because she couldn't get student loans approved without a cosigner. Turns out, when daddy isn't guaranteeing everything, banks expect you to have income and credit history. What a concept. She moved in with Miranda, sharing a fold-out couch in a 600-square-foot apartment. The same girl who'd complained about her Georgetown dorm being too small was now splitting a bathroom with her mother. Miranda's interior design business collapsed when her main clients, other country club wives, found out about the affair. Turns out, when your social circle discovers you're a cheating spouse, they stop hiring you to decorate their houses. She ended up working at a furniture store making $12 an hour, selling discount recliners to people who actually earned their paychecks. The woman who used to spend $400 on face cream was now asking customers if they wanted the extended warranty on a $300 couch. My buddy Tommy helped me pack for Phoenix, providing commentary on my ex-family's spectacular collapse. You know what the best part is, he said, taping up a box of tools. You didn't have to destroy them. They destroyed themselves the second they chose a con artist over the man who was actually taking care of them. Karma's a beautiful thing, I agreed. Nah, man. This is what happens when parasites kill their host. They starve. 3 years after the divorce, I was living proof that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better. My life in Arizona was everything my old existence wasn't. Honest, straightforward, and built on mutual respect instead of financial obligation. I met Carmen 8 months into the Phoenix gig. She was the project engineer on our manufacturing complex. Sharp as a plasma cutter, divorced with 2 teenage kids who actually had jobs, and the first woman in years who understood that real work meant something. Our first conversation wasn't about feelings or spiritual journeys. It was about stress calculations and weld specifications. She caught a contractor error that would have cost us $50,000 to fix later. You know your stuff, I told her after the meeting. 22 years of cleaning up other people's mistakes will do that, she said, with a grin that made me forget I was supposedly done with women forever. Carmen had fought her own war. Her ex was a financial advisor who'd been skimming client accounts to fund his gambling addiction. She knew betrayal, and more importantly, she knew how to rebuild from the ashes. The best revenge is building something better, she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from Camelback Mountain. Not just different, actually better. Carmen's kids, Drake and Lena, were nothing like Celeste. Drake worked at a bike shop after school and saved every penny for a motorcycle. Lena babysat neighborhood kids and was putting herself through community college. They called me Nate, treated me with respect, and never once asked for anything beyond basic courtesy. The difference was striking. These kids had been raised to contribute, not consume. Celeste had been sending occasional texts over the past year, not asking for money, just updates about her life, like I ever asked for it. She'd started working, gotten her own apartment, and seemed to be actually growing up. It was a gradual process, but she seemed to be learning what responsibility actually meant. Meanwhile, back in my old life, the entertainment continued. Patricia called with updates that were better than any reality show. Ian got arrested, she announced during one of our monthly check-ins. Wire fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. Turns out he's been running this scam for 8 years across 12 states. Holy cow. The FBI had been tracking him for 2 years. My documentation and your surveillance footage were key evidence. He's looking at 8 to 12 years federal prison. The news got better. Celeste called about 6 months after I'd gotten engaged to Carmen, working as a server and living in Miranda's one-bedroom apartment. Dad, I know I screwed up. I was rude and stupid, and I hurt you. Good for you, I said, meaning it. Luke won't take my calls. His mom told me he's dating someone who pays her own student loans. Smart man. Dad, I'm trying to save money to finish my degree. No, I cut her off. You made your choice. Live with it. But here's where the story gets really good. Luke kept in touch, and his updates were better than any reality show. Sarah and I are engaged, he told me during one of our quarterly calls. She works 2 jobs to pay for school. When I mentioned the house down payment you were going to give Celeste and me, she said she'd never feel comfortable accepting something like that. That's when I knew. Sounds like you found a keeper. We're having a small wedding. Her parents' backyard, about $8,000 total. We want to pay for everything ourselves. The difference was staggering. Celeste had demanded a $450,000 spectacle. Luke was marrying someone who understood that substance mattered more than show. Miranda made one last desperate play 2 years after the divorce. She showed up at my Phoenix apartment. Somehow she'd tracked down my address, looking like she'd aged a decade in 2 years. Nate, Ian left me, she said, like this was news. The whole thing was a mistake. 21 years has to mean something. I looked at her standing on my doorstep in a discount store outfit, her roots showing gray because she couldn't afford her salon anymore. It did mean something, I said. Yet it meant nothing to you. Is there really no going back? Nope, I am not a backup plan. Not for you and not for Celeste. She started crying, but I was done with those tears. They'd lost their power years ago. I made mistakes. You made choices, I corrected. Every day for 14 months, you chose to lie to me, use my money to fund your affair, and teach our daughter that betrayal was acceptable. Those weren't mistakes. That was who you chose to be. I closed the door and went back to my life, the real one I'd built with Carmen and her kids. Tommy visited for a week that summer, marveling at how different my life had become. You look 10 years younger, he said over drinks on my patio. Good for you, brother. Best thing that ever happened to me, I said, and meant it. You know what I heard through the grapevine? Celeste's working at that furniture store with her mom now. Same place, side by side, selling recliners to people who work for a living. Poetic justice, I said. Mother-daughter bonding over commission sales, Tommy laughed. Ian really brought them together in the end. Update. All right, folks. Let me give you a quick update on how things went down after that. It'll make you smile, I'm sure. Carmen and I got engaged on a hiking trip through Sedona. Simple ceremony planned for spring. Just close friends, her respectful kids, and my crew who'd become family. The company promoted me to regional supervisor with a salary that made my old income look like allowance money. Celeste called about 6 months after I'd gotten engaged to Carmen. Dad, I'm pregnant. I wanted you to know. Congratulations. Who's the father? Jacob, he's a paramedic. We met at the restaurant. Paramedics work their butts off for decent money. They don't get into it for the cash. Actual sense of purpose there. We're getting married next month. City Hall, then dinner with his parents. Would you consider coming? The old me would have said yes immediately, but I stopped there for a minute. Why? Because despite everything, you're still my dad, and I want my child to know their grandfather. First honest thing she'd said in years. I thought about it for a week before calling back. I'll come, but I want something clear. I'm not your financial backup plan anymore. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be because you actually want one, not because you need something. I understand. I don't want your money, Dad. I just want your respect back. Then earn it. The wedding was exactly what she'd said. Simple, honest, paid for by 2 people who worked for a living. Jacob shook my hand, looked me in the eye. No nonsense. The kid had calluses from actually working, and didn't mention money once during our conversation. Celeste looked different, older, more serious. The attitude was gone, replaced by something that might actually be maturity. Thank you for coming, she said after the ceremony. I know I don't deserve it. You don't, I agreed. Yet I am giving you a chance. Now earn it. She nodded and smiled. 6 months later, I held my grandson for the first time. Nate Jr., they named him after me. The kid looked just like Celeste did as a baby, but hopefully without the silver spoon. I want him to know that nothing in life is free. Celeste told me while feeding him. That respect is earned and family loyalty goes both ways. Good. Make sure he learns early. Jacob, changing a diaper like he'd been doing it forever, looked up and grinned. Don't worry, sir. This kid's going to learn the value of hard work. No participation trophies in our house. Remember Patricia? She called with the final chapter of Ian's story. Sentenced to 10 years federal prison, she announced. Restitution ordered for $340,000 to all his victims. Not that any of us will see a dime, but at least he's off the streets. What about Miranda? She testified for the prosecution. Apparently, Ian convinced her to liquidate her retirement account for one last investment opportunity right before he disappeared. She lost another $45,000. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor like that. The betrayal that destroyed my old life turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find what you actually needed. The life I have now, built on honesty, mutual respect, and people who value what I bring beyond a paycheck. And that, right there, is everything.